Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a double fire team in the Greatly Remix Cup that got me to 3200 ELO, which is 5 points off the global leaderboards. I do want to clarify that I don't think this is a good team for climbing, so if you're looking to gain some ELO, I don't recommend using this particular team, as I don't think the results would necessarily be repeatable. For the team, I have Cresselia on the lead, I have Solar Beam Pyroar as the save switch, looking to bait out water types, and Shadow Charizard as the closer. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's check out the team in action. Hopping into the first match, leading Cresselia into Shadow Victory Bell. I have 3 counters to this Pokemon. I'm going to stay in to start, save switch into the Pyroar. Opponent is going to wait a little bit, send in Poliwrath, and they are not going to like what's about to happen. Pyroar going for the Solar Beam. Get that Poliwrath out of here, the full one-shot. Back in comes the Victory Bell, but I can send in the Charizard. Charizard, more than happy to absorb an Acid Spray or a Leaf Blade here. Opponent is going to fire off the double resisted Leaf Blade. In the back, it's a Mandibuzz with that Charizard energy lead. Opponent is going to concede the match. We've got a massive core breaker on the lead in the next match, Cresselia versus Shadow Magnezone. I throw one counter, save switch into the Pyroar, hopefully to force them into an overtap, which they do, and that is very nice, as that allows me to land and incinerate onto that Magnezone. They send in the Mantine, and right on cue, there is the Solar Beam. Solar Beam dealing massive damage. Opponent goes for the Water Pulse. Pyroar is so glassy that an Aerial Ace would have knocked out there, but I'm more than happy that they chose to go for the more expensive move. They're now going to fire off the Aerial Ace. They could have potentially committed to a second Water Pulse and gotten it. They're going to send back in the Magnezone, but now that the Incinerate has landed, this Magnezone is a lot more threatened by a potential Future Sight, so they actually end up committing the shield. I'm farming up with the Cresselia, trying to go for the Future Sight. Unfortunately, the game stutters and forces an overtap, so I play to a CMP tie when I was trying to click the move right when I got it. I go for the Future Sight after shielding the Mirror Shot. Opponent commits the final shield. And now, at this point, I think I have to save my remaining shield for the Shadow Charizard. Wild Charge connects. They're heavily debuffed. They're going to be able to get my final shield with a Wild Charge. I have an energy lead. I can make a Blast Burn versus just about anything in the game. They send in Gligar. I'm going to overfarm, play 2 charge attack priority here, and fire off the Blast Burn. Blast Burn picks up the one-hit KO. Back in comes the Shadow Magnezone, looking for the farm down, but it will not happen. Shadow Charizard making the Dragon Claw. Resisted damage is enough. Down goes the Magnezone, and I'm able to take the game. Very neutral lead in the next match, Cresselia versus Shadow Gligar. Opponent tries to catch onto a Ferrothorn, and this is part of the reason why I did want to try double fire, is I felt like a lot of teams were very, very weak to fire because there were a lot of Carbinks. So the goal is, if there is some kind of Carbink in the back, I want to try and bait it out with the Pyroar and then Solar Beam it. Solar Beam can't flip switch versus a Carbink, but it can put it into one Grass Knot range. And then hopefully Shadow Charizard up energy can sweep in the end game. There, I arguably should have gone for the Solar Beam, but I wanted to guarantee damage even if they committed a shield. But now they're in a range where I can very easily knock them out with a Grass Knot, which is very okay for me. I go for the Grass Knot, opponent will commit the shield. They want some damage on the Cresselia, but not only have I got rid of the Ferrothorn, but I'm up a shield, I'm up energy, I can knock out the Gligar unless they're willing to go down the final shield, and 2-to-1 shield Charizard is so good. In the back, oh no, they have a Alolan Ninetales, and this is so over. I'm going for the Future Sight. Opponent commits the shield. In comes the Shadow Charizard. Opponent concedes immediately after seeing that Pokemon. The Alolan Ninetales back for revenge in the next match, leading it into Cresselia. I'm going to farm up energy with Cresselia, send in the Pyroar. They send in Poliwrath. Poliwrath looking for the counter down, but the Pyroar, it's not the greatest IVs ever, but it makes the Solar Beam. Get that Poliwrath out of here. Let's go. And Poliwrath gets one hit by that Solar Beam. Back in comes the Ninetales. Ninetales will get the farm down. I'm going to send in Cresselia because Shadow Charizard, even though it resists Charm, is so frail that it honestly doesn't do amazing versus Charmers in the 2 shield. Charmers love to shield, so I am going to be firing off this Grass Knot. The Grass Knot bait does work. That's huge. And now I can make the Future Sight. This will not KO, but it does quite a lot of damage. They've already shielded once. Are they willing to double shield? No, they are not. I send in the Charizard. In hindsight, maybe I should have stayed in with the Cresselia to force them to throw, because now I'm going down a shield, and in the back, it is Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz, definitely a problem Pokemon for this team because I don't have Moonblast. I could just TM over to Moonblast, but I really don't have a lot of charge TMs at the moment. So I was thinking, you know what? I already have Future Sight on here, so we're just going to keep Future Sight on here. And I shield the Aerial Ace bait. My opponent's Luscon was going for an Aerial Ace and having me no-shield it, but I end up shielding it, and that's extremely, extremely unfortunate. Let's see, can I survive the Dark Pulse here? I do. Can I make it to the Claw? No, I cannot. If I get that Claw, the game's a win, but unfortunately, I do not. Opponent gets to fire off the Aerial Ace. They send in the Ninetales. Very close to a win, but we can't quite pull it off. Terrible lead awaits us in the next match. Cresselia versus Ferrothorn. I'm going to save switch into the Pyroar. Opponent is going to send in Mantine. Not a Pokemon that Charizard wants to see, so good to bait this out. And now I can do what Pyroar does best, go for the Solar Beam. That is only neutral damage onto a pretty bulky Mon, and that still hits incredibly hard. I'm just going to let the Pyroar go. Opponent goes for an Aerial Ace that does not KO, and now suddenly I can win Switch Advantage. And Switch Advantage is pretty nice here. So I'm just going to shield, win Switch. They can't bring in the Ferrothorn. They send in a Mandibuzz though, and Mandibuzz up a shield is so bad. I mentioned it earlier, I don't have Moonblast, so I am in trouble now. The Incinerate does register, and unfortunately, I don't have Moonblast. I'm going to send in Cresselia, however, because I know I can tank multiple Dark Pulses, and even though I don't have Moonblast, they don't know that yet. So I'm going to farm up and pretend like I have Moonblast, even though I don't. I need this bluff to work, and it does. They commit the shield, and for all they know, I could have just been baiting. So now they're going to fire off another Dark Pulse, and I just have to watch for a switch into the Ferrothorn. There it is, and I can send in the Charizard. This is tough. It's 50-50 in this meta. If they have Thunder or Flash Cannon, I call it, and it's the Power Whip. They don't have Thunder, and suddenly I'm in the driver's seat of this match. That call was absolutely everything. They shield up the Blast Burn, and I have a choice to make. I decide, you know what, on the off chance they were baiting the first time, I'm going to shield, but it turns out they just don't have Thunder. They just do not have it. They fire off another move, but this cannot be a Thunder. This is only enough for a Power Whip. So Power Whip really not going to threaten Charizard. It's double resisted. I get the double up on Blast Burns. They switch into the Mandibuzz, but it's too little too late. Down goes the Mandibuzz. Down goes the Ferrothorn. Shadow Charizard on an absolute rampage as we take the win. Moving to the next match, leading Cresselia into Whimsicott. I have two better responses in the back, so I am going to farm up a little bit of energy, send in the Pyroar. Opponent sends in Magcargo, and unfortunately, I'm behind by one turn there. My opponent timed it perfectly, so they make the Rock Tomb just before I make my Solar Beam. I'm going to send in Cresselia, and my opponent here, Zizwile, is definitely known for the Spice, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him running Double Fire as well. He will fire off energy. I'm fine with tanking an overheat here. My opponent will go for the Rock Tomb, and that debuffs me, so I'm not going to be able to go for a Grass Knot and a farm down. Instead, I'm going to go for the Future Sight to make sure that I get rid of this Pokemon. Future Sight picks up the KO. In comes the Whimsicott. I send in the Charizard. Whimsicott firing off a Moonblast. It is resisted, so I am going to let this go, but then I remember this is a Shadow Charizard. That does way too much damage. In the back is Camerupt. I just win this game if I shield the Moonblast, because Camerupt would not be able to farm me down, but after the Moonblast lands, I'm getting incinerated down by a Shadow Camerupt, the battle of the Double Fire teams, and it looks like I am not going to be able to get the win here. I commit the shield as Camerupt goes for the Earth Power. I go for the Grass Knot before Camerupt makes it to Earth Power number 2. Grass Knot is neutral, it will pick up the KO, back in comes the Whimsicott, but the Whimsicott just has not taken enough damage throughout the course of the match. Unfortunately, the Incinerate from Pyroar didn't land on it to start the game, and a couple wing attacks, it's going to be close to the range where a Future Sight can KO, but it's not quite. Whimsicott going to be able to take the win. Unfortunate game there. If I shielded the Charizard, I was set, but unfortunately, I let it through. My error, and I lose the game. We see a very nice lead in the next match, Cresselia versus Carbink. Honestly, Cresselia versus Carbink is a very neutral matchup overall, just because of how incredibly strong Carbink is. But I would much rather see Carbink on the lead than versus my backline. So for me, this is terrific. They're staying in this matchup. They always go for the Moonblast first just to try and get some damage and fish for that tiny chance at an attack drop. I'm going to look to overfarm and go for the Grass Knot again, making sure that my opponent is not able to catch. The Grass Knot will connect. Opponent save switches into a Tropius. And it looks like we have come across Grasshole. And if that's the case, I'm in an amazing position here. They go for the Aerial Ace. Pyroar, not going to be worried about that. And I'm going to go for an undercharge on the Flame Charge. I don't want this to KO. I want to take a little extra damage and to leave with a Flame Charge loaded. This is a 1x boosted Flame Charge. It is going to be resisted by the Carbink, but the Carbink is pretty low. And with this Flame Charge landing, this will guarantee that my opponent will be knocked out by the Grass Knot. So the Flame Charge is able to land. I get the Incinerate through as well. I have energy on the Cresselia, and I just need the Carbink gone. So I fire off the Grass Knot. Grass Knot picks up the KO. What's in back is the Victory Bell. You bet. In comes the Charizard, and the opponent top lefts instantly. We see a pretty okay lead in the next match, Cresselia versus Shadow Dragonite. This is definitely a matchup where I wish I had Moonblast, but Shadow Dragonite is very, very frail, so I'm going to tank the Dragon Claw, build up to the Future Sight, and then bait with the Grass Knot. Shadow Dragonite gets KO'd here if they, oh my goodness, I was going to say if they no shield, but they call my bait, and I'm instantly on the back foot. That's an insane bait call by my opponent. I'm going to go for the Future Sight to guarantee the knockout, but I'm expecting my opponent is going to shield now. I'm forced to aggressively switch into the Charizard. Opponent will be able to make it to a move, and they will grab my final shield, but the wing attack goes through, so Dragonite will be KO'd. I have a big energy head start. What does my opponent have in the back here? They're sending in Empoleon. I can't make double Blast Burn, but I can make a Dragon Claw plus a Blast Burn. So I'm going to go for the Dragon Claw bait here. Blast Burn would one-shot. Opponent calls the bait again. This man refusing to shield, and I just lose. I have no way of winning this game. I'm just resigning the match. What an absolute madman. Oh my goodness. Moving to the next match, leading Cresselia into Pidgeot. This is not a particularly fun matchup because my opponent is able to outpace. So before I can make it to a Future Sight, they're able to debuff me. And I don't really want to switch out because if I switch into the Pyroar, then I'm also getting outpaced because I need 15 turns to get to my first Flame Charge. So I'm forced to stay in here and think that if they have a Pidgeot, it's unlikely they'll have a Carbink in the back just because they need some really good stuff to beat opposing Carbinks because Pidgeot can do nothing to Carbink. They're going to debuff me again. You hate to see it. I'm now a -4 attack. Look at this right here. This Future Sight does nothing, but I can make it to the Grass Knot, but not if the frame drop happens again. Niantic, fix your game, man. Fix your game. I don't get the Grass Knot. This does mean I get farm on the Charizard, though. So I get a 2-wing attack head start. They have a Quagsire in the back. Unfortunately, the Quagsire, now it's my opponent's turn to lag, and they get 1 turn bring-in, so they don't get a sneak. So the Dragon Claw is going to connect. I'm going to be able to fire off another Dragon Claw here, and this Dragon Claw will be getting them pretty low. I'm expecting them to do 1 in the move, so I'm going to go for a catch of the Aqua Tail onto the Pyroar. Turns out they're actually running Mud Bomb, not Aqua Tail. In the back is a Surfetched. Surfetched gets a farm down, and this is going to be very tough for Charizard. I decide, you know what? I have to live a Night Slash. They Leaf Blade. They're running Brave Bird. Oh my goodness. I'm going to get a full farm down. If they land a Night Slash, I think I just lose. But I got really lucky with the fact that they did not have Night Slash. I was thinking, you know what? I think I have to survive it and survive the counters, but it ends up working out. Moving to the next match, leading against a Superior, opponent sends in Carbink, and oh no, this is my karma. This is my karma for featuring the Superior Carbink and Dugong team. I think I'm about to get Superior Carbink and Dugonged. My opponent eats the Solar Beam to the face on that Carbink. So the good news is I bait out the Carbink, but if it's Dugong in the back, Charizard does not beat Dugong. That's a very tough spot to be in, and Cresselia just cannot get that farm down without the opponent making it to the Rock Slide. I'm going to be able to get the full Psycho Cut farm down. I'm firing off the Future Sight into Superior, but if they're running Leaf Tornado, they're just going to Leaf Tornado the Charizard and switch out. So I'm going to send in the Charizard. This will be the Leaf Tornado, so I'm going to let it go. It's double resisted. Please, no debuff. And I get debuffed. And it's Dugong in the back. And yeah, that's game over. That is so unfortunate. Oh my goodness. But hey, that is my karma for showcasing a team like this, is I'm going to have to run into it as well. It is a very strong climbing team. But man, oh man, I had so much fun running it, but being on the other side, getting whooped by that team does not feel amazing. If I can save Charizard energy, I may have a chance, but my clock will not be up. They're going to get a farm down before I can potentially switch out, so I'm forced to just throw energy. And yeah, there is just zero way that I can win this game at this point because the Superior, it's just way too healthy. They're going to be able to apply debuff with the Icy Wind, and unfortunately, not able to win that game. Hopping into the final match, looking for some redemption, and that's not a good start. Cresselia into Ferrothorn. I'm going to stay in, throw one Psycho Cut, land the Incinerate, and my opponent sends in Salazzle. And in this 3200 ELO range, a lot of people trying out fire types, which is very, very fun. So it looks like other people are definitely seeing what I'm seeing, at least on the ELO bracket that I was in, where there's a lot of Mons weak to fire. So we have the very common Salazzle versus Pyroar matchup, which everyone is very familiar with the intricacies of course. I'm going to send in Cresselia. I can tank whatever move is thrown here. Cresselia is the damage sponge and Carbink counter on the team. They go for the Poison Fang. They're going to go for another Poison Fang. And I would love to just be able to snipe with the Charizard here, because Charizard up energy is just too good. And we've already gotten the shield advantage, and it's Crocalor in the back. And this game is just over. Shadow Charizard fully sweeps in this endgame. I just don't bait. Dragon Clawing is my lose con. Opponent gets the shield call right, but unfortunately for them, that's not going to be enough to win them this game. Because I'm only 2 away from a Blast Burn, and Blast Burn is going to be able to KO. And yeah, this is going to be goodbye to the Crocalor. Crocalor, I am so sorry, but today there's a new fire type in town. This is only a Power Whip. But I was thinking, you know what? In case I miscounted, I'm going to shield anyway. So I end up shielding the Power Whip. The opponent does not want to see their Ferrothorn get toasted by a Blast Burn, so they resign the match. All in all, I had an absolute blast with this team. As I mentioned at the start, this is not a team that I recommend for climbing, as I don't think the results are probably repeatable, but I just had an absolute blast with it. I peaked at 3200 ELO and ended up having a couple 2-3, 3-2 sets around that range. So very close to leaderboards, but could not quite get there. And honestly, a lot of it I felt like was misplaced on my part. Double Fire was a very fun strategy, although it's very tough to find a fire type that can successfully bait out Carbink and actually do some damage to it. Like, I know some fire types have Scorching Sands, but a non-stab Scorching Sands does not do a lot to Carbink. So Pyroar, weirdly enough, ended up being the Pokemon that best fit that bill. I don't recommend Pyroar as like a Pokemon for gaining a ton of ELO, and that's part of why I mentioned this is not a team that I recommend if you're looking to like climb ranks. But I had a lot of fun with the team, and seeing people again and again and again be clueless about Solar Beam was really, really fun. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.